Good evening, and welcome to My El Paso, Reaching for the Stars, the keynote of this year's Tom Lee Month with Ginger Kerrick and Danny Olivas. When Tom Lee left El Paso to get an art education in Chicago, he felt trapped and strapped, living in a one-room kitchenette on Fullerton Avenue, a high-rise. He couldn't see the grass and he couldn't see the trees of Lincoln Park, nor could he see the stars. He missed the wide spaces and the bright sun of El Paso. And so, as a journey of escape, he pulled out his drawing board and made himself a star map with what he said is a right ascension timetable of the constellations in the northern heavens, seeing in my mind's eye the North Star and the Big Dipper over Mount Franklin at home, remembering how the little dots of white I placed and lettered made the shape of old Orion coming up over the Wacos on a fall evening, or the Lyre with bright Vega overhead in the quietness at Mimbres on a summer night. Tonight, we'll hear from two other El Pasoans who have dreamed of the stars and reached for them, each in their own way. Education has been a key, and I'm very pleased tonight to introduce you to Dee Margot, President of the Board of Managers for the El Paso Independent School District.
Thank you. It pleases me to be part of this evening's festivities because so much of what you'll hear tonight points to education and the tradition of excellence we have in our community. This is the first year the keynote has been the culmination of a youth conference titled Our El Paso, Reaching for the Stars, which was held today at the Lydia Patterson Institute, a Methodist mission school in the Segundo Barrio. It is celebrating its 100th anniversary, and there is a lot to be proud of. Most of its students are financially impoverished, come from financially impoverished backgrounds, and 99% go to college and graduate, becoming leaders in many fields. Do we have students, teachers, and graduates from Lydia Patterson with us tonight? Would you please stand? Happy 100th birthday. You know, Lydia Patterson is one example of excellence to be found in El Paso education. Both of our speakers are graduates of El Paso Public Schools. Ginger Kerrick went to Hanks in the Isleta Independent School District, and Danny Olivas went to Burgess in the El Paso Independent School District. Both also attended UTEP. Tom Lee was also a graduate of El Paso High School in 1924, once reflecting that when he arrived at the Art Institute of Chicago, he was much better equipped than his peers. He is part of a long line of El Paso Independent School District graduates who have made a difference in this world. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce the new superintendent of the El Paso Independent School District, Mr. Juan Cabrera, who is especially equipped to lead. Originally from Kingsville and Del Rio, Juan is the son of educators who were the first in their families to attend college. I might also add that Spanish is his first language. He knew from his childhood that education was the key, and he went for it, getting his undergraduate degree from Texas A&I in Kingsville, and then earning a law degree from the University of Texas, completing courses at the London School of Business and the Harvard Negotiation Project. He brings new meaning to a well-rounded person with experience in the classroom and in business, in bilingual education and organizational management. He is a man of integrity who is excited to be in El Paso and who has brought his beautiful family with him. Please welcome Mr. Juan Cabrera.
Good evening. Thank you, Dee, and hello to all my new friends in El Paso. Excited to be here, and my family has joined me tonight. We have Eduardo, my son, my daughter Sofia, my youngest daughter Amalia, and my mother-in-law Rafe. You're here, if you can stand up. Welcome to El Paso, new El Pasoans. We're excited to be in El Paso, and we have 3 El Paso ISD students, so we're committed. We're all in with the district. If you're going to lead it, you have to have your kids there. That's the only way to do it. Have had a lot of experience in my life before we got to El Paso. We had the opportunity to live in Latin America and in Europe, and a couple different places in Texas. And I feel like all of these experiences have prepared us very well to be here in El Paso today. It's a great feeling and a privilege to be the superintendent of a school district with so much history and so many outstanding graduates. EPISD goes all the way back to 1882 when $700 was subscribed by the citizens in lands, money, and all material for the purpose of erecting a public school. O.T. Bassett was the first president, and Mayor Joseph McGaffin oversaw the school board. In 1883, El Paso was a progressive city of 4,000, and there were 200 students in an old wooden structure until a new one could be built. The principal, John Merrill, received $150 a month and used his own furniture. One teacher, Anna Moore, received $75 a month, soon after Central School was built on the corner of Myrtle and Campbell Streets in 1884. The first high school was established on the 2nd floor. Subjects taught included mathematics, grammar, and at the top of the list, penmanship. We could probably use some of that today, right, in schools. In 1893, the first public kindergarten class in Texas was opened at Central Elementary School here in Texas. Pretty interesting. And the word kindergarten is actually a German word, in case you didn't know that. That's another piece of useless trivia that you can use someday. Now the district is the 10th largest in Texas and the 61st largest in the United States, with over 64,000 students, 94 campuses, and 9,000 employees, and an annual budget of over $460 million. In my first 3 weeks, this is my 4th week on the job, we've spent a lot of time visiting classrooms and schools and understanding and visiting teachers that were visiting classrooms were great teachers and teaching the Ginger Derricks and Donnie Olivases and Tom Lees of tomorrow. One person I'm looking forward to working closely with here in El Paso is Dr. Diana Natalicio, who was named president of UTEP in 1988 and has watched its enrollment grow from 15,000 students to more than 22,600. With its annual budget increasing from $65 million to more than $400 million, and importantly, its doctoral programs growing from 1 to 20, she is a star in the universe of education, having achieved her own success, like everyone here on the stage tonight, through education. Dr. Natalicio holds an undergraduate degree from St. Louis University and a master's degree in Portuguese and a doctorate in linguistics from the University of Texas at Austin. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Diana Natalicio.
Good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. I'm delighted to be here this evening with all of you on this very special occasion. I've always considered myself very privileged to have spent precious hours with Tom and Sarah Lee. And I'm deeply grateful to Adair Margot and the Tom Lee Institute for the opportunity to join you in this evening in honoring these 2 remarkable El Pasoans. The lives of Tom and Sarah Lee and UTEP, also known as the College of Mines and Texas Western College, converged many, many times and in many different ways throughout our nearly 100-year history. And we've been fortunate to happily celebrate many of those. One of those was Tom and Sarah Lee's establishment in 1997 of an endowment to support the Sarah and Tom Lee Award to encourage aspiring student artists at UTEP to pursue art as a career. Over the years, many deserving UTEP students have benefited from Tom and Sarah's generosity. Each year during UTEP's annual juried student art exhibition, one student is selected for the Sarah and Tom Lee Award, and the winner's artwork becomes part of UTEP's permanent art collection at the Rubin Center for the Visual Arts. Tom Lee's desire to encourage promising UTEP artists strongly supports UTEP's mission of raising the aspirations and educational attainment of all of our students, whatever their majors. UTEP invests in the dreams of our students and encourages them to reach for the stars. Tom Lee, Ginger Kerrick, and Danny Olivas are all graduates of schools in the El Paso area, and all are stellar examples of the power of public education. My guess is that most of us here this evening are the proud alumni of public education, both pre-college and post-secondary. UTEP takes very seriously our role as a public university in a historically undereducated region, committed to offering its residents affordable access to excellent, highly competitive education. In fact, UTEP has become a national role model in the education of the 21st century student. As many of you know, last month, Washington Monthly magazine ranked UTEP among the nation's top 10 universities, placing us at number 7 overall, between number 6 Stanford and number 8 Harvard. And for the second year in a row, the magazine has ranked UTEP number 1 among all research universities in the United States for serving as an engine of what they call student social mobility. What that means is that we're nationally recognized as a model for enabling talented students of this Paso del Norte region, however modest their beginnings, to achieve the American dream of fulfilled aspirations, prosperity, and enhanced quality of life. A proud achievement indeed. UTEP's growing reputation is an important part of El Paso's success story, the story of generations of students like Danny Olivas and Ginger Kerrick, whose pre-college public school education served as a strong foundation for outstanding higher education performance at UTEP and beyond, followed by very exciting careers. As UTEP approaches its centennial in 2014, we're planning a very special set of campus and community events that will commemorate not only a major milestone in UTEP's distinguished service to this region, but also the 100-year partnership between this university and the surrounding community. We are El Paso's university. It's truly exciting to recognize both Ginger Kerrick and Danny Olivas this evening. Their achievements set a high expectation bar for future generations of UTEP minors who are discovering that a great public education from pre-K through advanced university degrees can enable you to do anything, go anywhere, and yes, return home again. Before I share just a little bit of background on Ginger Kerrick first, I'd like to welcome her mother, Genoveva Kerrick, and her sisters Delia and Belia, who are here in the audience, perhaps with other family members. It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you here this evening. Welcome. At the age of 11, Ginger Kerrick had dreams of becoming a professional basketball player or an astronaut. But with the passing of her father, she understood the increased importance of a scholarship to attend college. She became an especially high achiever. After graduating second in her class from Hanks High School, she accepted an academic scholarship from UTEP, where she majored in physics and played on the UTEP women's basketball team until, in a very disappointing turn of events, she was injured just before the season began. Shifting gears toward a stronger focus on her astronaut aspirations at that point, Ginger transferred to Texas to work in a NASA co-op program there. She received both her undergraduate and master's degrees in physics at Texas Tech and joined NASA full-time in 1994 as a materials research engineer. During her early years at NASA, Ginger pursued her dreams of becoming an astronaut, but once again, her dreams were altered by illness. Although deeply disappointed, she realized she could still contribute meaningfully to the space program. After years of hard work, Ginger was selected as a flight director, supporting 13 International Space Station and 5 joint shuttle missions at the Johnson Space Center. She also became the first non-astronaut to serve as capsule communicator, that's Capcom in NASA language, the flight control position that relays information from mission control to an astronaut crew. We're all very, very proud of Ginger's many accomplishments, and we'll hear from her in a moment. And now, a brief story about Danny Olivas. A UTEP distinguished alumnus, Danny Olivas grew up gazing at the stars from the rooftop of his childhood home. He was born in Hollywood, California, but as the saying goes, Danny may not have been born in El Paso, but he got here as fast as he could. He graduated from Burgess High School and received his Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from UTEP, a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Houston, and a doctorate in Mechanical Engineering and Materials Science from Rice University. Danny was selected in 1998 as an astronaut in training at NASA, and from 1999 until his retirement in 2010, he worked in a variety of positions, each leading up to his selection for 2 space missions in 2007 and 2009. He has logged more than 668 hours in space and over 34 hours of extravehicular activity, also known as spacewalking. I recall a large group of UTEP students, faculty, and staff gathered in the Union Building, holding our collective breath during Danny's first flight in 2007. And I know, too, that many of us here in El Paso were glued to our television screens as we watched Danny emerge from the space station to do repairs under extremely challenging conditions, to say the least. After retirement from NASA, Danny and his family relocated to California, where he accepted a Director of Engineering position at Raytheon. More recently, while actively pursuing his interest in forensic engineering as a consultant, Danny has come home to El Paso and to the UTEP campus, where he serves as the director of the new Center for the Advancement of Space Safety and Mission Assurance Research, or CASMAR, and oversees UTEP's portfolio of space initiatives. All of us at UTEP are very happy to welcome Danny Olivas back to our campus. His wealth of experience and expertise in spaceflight safety will not only guide exciting research that will engage faculty, staff, and students at UTEP, but also greatly enhance the development of commercial spaceflight activity in this Paso del Norte region. Most of all, Danny represents a powerful role model who inspires talented young people across our community to reach for their stars. Welcome home to Danny. Please join me now in welcoming Ginger Kerrick, who, as a result of the government shutdown, is that what they're calling it? Joins us via video this evening. Ginger Kerrick.
Plainly see, due to the travel restrictions associated with the government furlough, I was unable to attend in person today. But this event was very important to me, so I did a little forward planning with some of our folks here at NASA and recorded this the Friday before the government shutdown. Because that's how we roll at NASA. We have a plan and a backup plan and a backup to that backup plan to make sure we get the job done. Just as I'm sure Tom Lee cherished his experiences in El Paso, I too am very grateful for having grown up in such a wonderful city that has prepared me well for life's many adventures. So I'd like to talk to you this evening about my El Paso. Now, to understand what a critical role El Paso played in both my personal and professional development, we have to go back to the very beginning. I know my mom is probably wishing I was there in person right now so she could slap me for showing y'all this photo. But hey, I am proud of my appearance, and this is where it all began. My mom and dad met at Price's Creameries way back in the late 1950s. My mother was a beautiful young woman from Delicias, Chihuahua, and my father was a handsome young man from Owensboro, Kentucky. This right here, this Price's connection, is why I am so fond of ice cream and dairy products. Imagine if my parents had been lactose intolerant. I may never have come into existence. So about a year or so after they met, they were married. First came my twin sisters, and then a couple of years later, my brother. They must have had their hands full with those three, because they waited 8 years to have me. I came along in the fall of 1969. You know how people say that the unborn child is influenced by what their mother sees and does during pregnancy? Well, I am quite certain that my mother spent all day watching TV and listening to the radio the summer and the fall of 1969 when Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 astronauts were exploring the surface of the moon, because I was born reaching for the stars. Growing up in the Kerrick family and in El Paso was a true blessing. I had a wonderful childhood. My family always celebrated my birthdays big. In this picture, you see me here with one of my favorites, a Bozo the Clown cake. And I remember being excited when I actually got to meet El Paso's very own Bozo the Clown, Hal Urich. I also enjoyed my summer at Safety Town over in the parking lot of the old Bassett Center. And I was active in brownies and enjoyed our family fishing trips to Ruidoso. This next place, though, was one of my absolute favorite places in El Paso, the Insights Museum. It was a science playground. I had so many great experiences there, and I was very sad to learn that it is no longer standing. But as I understand it, the new Explorium Museum, which opened its doors earlier this year, is just as much fun, if not more fun. So I hope to visit there the next time I am in El Paso. There were also a number of other outstanding organizations that played a role in my growing up in El Paso that are still in place today. We used to grow vegetables in our backyard, and I still have my ribbons from the 4-H baking contests where my zucchini bread was quite the hit. Since the Insights Museum was kind of far from our house, I spent quite a bit of time reading about math and science in the local branches of the El Paso Public Library. In fact, I remember checking out a book about astronomy and astronauts that became my inspiration for wanting to work at NASA when I was just 5 years old. I also spent a lot of time playing sports. I joined my first basketball league at the East Side YMCA when I was in the 4th grade. They didn't have a girls' team, so I played on the boys' team. But I didn't seem to mind that much. The boys did. When I was a little older, I spent numerous summers playing basketball at one of the many El Paso parks and recreation leagues and facilities. And since my junior high and high school didn't have a softball team, I was happy to have the Summer Softball League at Album Park, sponsored by the Eastwood Optimist Club. So it's clear that there were plenty of things to keep me entertained growing up in El Paso, but I did manage to squeeze in a little schooling in between all that fun. I attended Hanks High School. There, I had an opportunity to take a number of honors classes in math, science, English, and history. I was a member of the Math Club and the National Honor Society. I also played volleyball and basketball and graduated in 1987 as salutatorian. Hanks High School prepared me very well for college. I attended UTEP on an academic scholarship to study physics and enjoyed a far too brief stint on the UTEP women's basketball team before dislocating my kneecap for the 3rd and final time. So I hung up my high tops and took on a part-time job at the Tony Lama factory store selling boots. where I remember my take-home pay was exactly $70.72 a week, which was just enough to make my monthly car payment and have a little bit left over for gas, and maybe a lunchtime run or two down the street to the famous Chico's Tacos. After spending 2 years at UTEP, I transferred to Texas Tech, where my father had gone to school, and received both my bachelor's and my master's in physics from there. While attending Texas Tech, I started co-oping at NASA, and I finally reached my goal of getting hired permanently at NASA's Johnson Space Center in 1994. During my career at NASA, I have had the pleasure of working in a number of different areas. I have trained astronauts on the life support systems for the International Space Station. The space station was first launched into space back in 1998. We spent the next 12 years or so constructing it, and we've had astronauts living and working on board continuously since the year 2000. The two main countries involved in the early construction of the International Space Station were the US and Russia. So I had a chance to spend a total of about 3 years living and working in Russia, integrating the Russian and US training systems. I also had an opportunity to train the first 4 groups of astronauts that would fly on board the space station. I even learned to speak Russian while I was there, although I seem to have forgotten my Spanish. When my assignment in Russia was complete, I was offered a unique opportunity to become the first ever non-astronaut CAPCOM, or capsule communicator. That's the person in mission control that talks to the crew. Like in the movies, when the astronaut calls down with that famous line, "Houston, we have a problem." I, as the CAPCOM, would be the one to answer, "Hey, what's your problem?" After serving in the CAPCOM role for years, I again was presented with another awesome opportunity, interviewing for the position of flight director. To use our movie analogy again from Apollo 13, the flight director was the guy in the vest and the buzz cut, Ed Harris, the person that is ultimately in charge of the vehicle and responsible for the safety of the astronauts and their spacecraft. Well, I made it past the interviews, and in 2005, I became the first Hispanic female flight director. I started off supporting mission control for the International Space Station. After several years of supporting Space Station, I was able to certify to work the shuttle mission control room as well, and supported 3 shuttle missions from there before the shuttle retired. Then, in December of last year, after 8 years in the flight director ranks, I retired from the flight director office and accepted a position in management, where I am now responsible for managing the budget that allows our personnel to plan missions, to train the astronauts for those missions, and to execute those missions in mission control. As you can see, in my 22 years here at NASA, I have been truly blessed with many unique professional opportunities that have come my way. And through the years, I've had a chance to meet a number of famous people and have been honored with numerous awards. I have even had a street named after me. What? Who does that happen to? Mayor Cook, if you're out there, thank you. And while I am definitely grateful for and appreciative of all of those experiences, what I treasure most about all of this is that it has been so much fun. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank this incredible city. I have already mentioned a number of key people, companies, schools, and other organizations that have contributed to my success. But before I leave you this evening, I wanted to give a special note of thanks to a few specific individual El Pasoans who have played critical roles in my upbringing and have undoubtedly touched a number of other people's lives as well. Wayne Thornton, Mr. Masterson, Mrs. Rhodes, Larry Vanley, and my family, who was probably upset that I dragged out this lovely family photo. Sorry, sisters. Seriously, thanks to all of you, and thanks to the city of El Paso for providing me with everything I needed to go out and make my mark in this world, and for your continued support all of these years. And now, I would like to introduce your next guest speaker for the evening, my former coworker and very gifted and talented friend, Danny Olivas.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here back at the Plaza Theatre. You know, I remember as a kid coming here, we'd get off of, I was going to Queen of Peace at the time, like a pre-K program, and I remember coming into the lobby, and it was always at Christmas time, it seemed like. We watched some, cheesy Christmas movie, and then they'd parade us, back out the lobby, and then there would always be this Santa Claus there, and I even remember this sword that I got, and I loved that sword. It was great. Well, first off, I want to say thank you very much to Adair Margot and the Tom Lee Institute for bringing this all together and making it happen, as well as Explorium and Insights for their continued support of our youth in the El Paso area. So today's program, first off, and I also got to thank Ginger. Wasn't that great to see Ginger up there? She's an absolutely wonderful woman. I just really did enjoy our time working together. It was a wonderful experience. I actually had an opportunity after my flights to sit alongside console with her. The flight director always sat right next to the capsule communicator. And of course, we as astronauts, you're not going to do anything unless the flight director says it's okay to do it. And whenever we got ready to say something to the crew, despite what a lot of people think, you always have to ask the flight director permission first. And once they say, yeah, go ahead and say that, then you get to go ahead and say that. So that's kind of the way the astronaut plays a role in the flight control room. So tonight, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my El Paso. My El Paso growing up, the things that influenced me here. I'll share with you some confessions, share with you some little secrets, but more importantly, kind of hopefully paint a picture of not only why my El Paso is unique to me, but as you're going to see some common themes here from what Ginger shared with you, it's actually a very common experience that we have here. That's what makes the city a great city. So when you think about who we are a family. So this was a picture that was taken a few years back. You'll notice there's a little bit more hair, and it's not quite as gray as it is now, the hair that is there. And my kids are actually a little bit older than this. This was taken in about 2007, prior to STS 117. My family's just been a tremendous support for everything that I've done in my life. My wife, who grew up not more than 6 blocks away from where I grew up on the east side, huge supporter. Marie has been just a rock solid, oak tree that I can hang on to when things get to be really, really rough, and was definitely instrumental in making any of this happen. But there's always a beginning to the story, right? And Ginger took you back to Price's Creamery, right? So I think I'm going to actually go back a little bit further than that. This is the 12th census of the United States, right? And the reason I thought this was interesting, one time I was really into genealogy, and way down here is the name of a gentleman by the name of Valente Olivas, and his wife, Jesusita. So the El Paso family, my direct descendants, moved here, immigrated here way back in 1886. And my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, he immigrated here at the age of 14. Could you imagine that? Age of 14, leaving your home city of Santo Tomas, Chihuahua, to come to a brand new land. Now, mind you, through my research, he didn't come with a family. There were no family members that were here. Eventually, his father, Alejo, showed up because, as we see later on in family photos, when they got married here in the El Paso area, both his father and my great-grandmother's mother were the ones that were alive at the time and were there, presided at the wedding. And of course, they were married in El Paso, Texas. November 30th, 1899. So a while ago. Now, we're not going to go all the way back. But I wanted you to think about this, because think about what it took immigrants back then to leave their home country and to pursue a new life in this wonderful country of the United States. Took a lot of guts, took a lot of, probably to succeed, hard work. In fact, I'll tell you that Valente, his home residence was in Smeltertown. How many people saw the Asarco chimney come down? Yeah, I mean, it was a landmark here in El Paso for a long time. That was Smeltertown. And that's where he lived. That's where he worked. But we're going to fast forward a little bit. And so for those of you a little bit older, you know, my mom and my father, both here in El Paso. My mom was a Silver Fox, Jefferson, grew up in the Clardy Fox area. My father was how many people remember the Tech Lions? Yeah, Tech High School? Okay, so he was Tech. And they met here in El Paso. They're from El Paso. They were born here in El Paso. They dated. And they would go on to get married. Now, their relationship and their courtship, probably very familiar for those of us that grew up in the El Paso area with a lot of those relationships that we had when we were growing up. So it shouldn't surprise you that that today they still are happily married. I think they just finished celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary and going strong. And they're loving life in their east side home in El Paso. So let's talk about me. You know, as an El Paso astronaut, you're a public figure. And I'll be the first to tell you, I suffer all sorts of criticism from all over the place. And I thought, you know what? It's time for me just to come clean with everybody. Okay? I have never, ever said that I was born here in El Paso. Because to be honest with you, this is where I was born. A small town on the West Coast called Los Angeles. And in fact, when my father graduated from high school, he ended up moving west, looking for opportunities, you know, trying to kind of just look for things for him to share with his would-be wife when she graduated from high school. So when they eventually got married, moved out to the West Coast, and actually I was born in the small town of North Hollywood, California, in the San Fernando Valley. So, yeah, you know what? I wasn't born in El Paso. But when I look at who I am, I'm very much a Sun City boy. This is a picture I took on STS-117. And so for those of us who are having a hard time taking a look at that, you got the beautiful Rio Grande Valley kind of running up against the Franklin Mountains. And for those who can see, we've got, let's see, this area here is the airport. This is the Biggs Field area over here in Fort Bliss. And if everybody waves, you can see yourself in that picture. They're waving. They're about right there in the Plaza Theatre here in downtown. This is where I grew up. You know, and so to the critics that I've had in the past, and eventually you get to the point where you just stop reading a bunch of this nonsense. They say, you know, he's not a native-born El Pasoan. He's not a true native El Pasoan. If your definition of native El Paso means being born here, then okay, then maybe I'm not. But hopefully by the end of this presentation, you can make that decision for yourself as to whether or not I really am a true El Pasoan. Now, what I will tell you, let me tell you a little bit about my story of what took me to where I went to in my life. At the age of 7, my parents took us on a family vacation. And we went to a wonderful place called Houston, Texas, which, unlike El Paso, actually had water. In fact, it had so much water it was suspended in the air. It smothered you when you went there, right? But while we were there, we visited a number of the landmarks. We visited the Astrodome, we visited Astro World, the Gulf of Mexico. It was all great. But what inspired me was very similar to what inspired Ginger. I was taken by my parents to Johnson Space Center. And this was in the early 1970s, near the end of the Apollo program, and I remember us going to a museum and seeing hardware and seeing artifacts of the Apollo era. And that inspired me, because I couldn't believe it. You know, growing up as a West Texas kid, I remember my dad taking us on top of the roof of our house on the east side with a little cheap, $12, $15 telescope and looking at the moon. And just the concept of that we as human beings put people on the moon, just blew my mind. You know, and then as we were getting ready to leave Johnson Space Center, my dad, I have a fond memory of this, a very specific memory, of him calling us over to him and standing in front of a mock-up of a rocket engine, and him explaining to me the parts that he used to build when he was in California was for a small subcontractor called Gamma Precision Products. And they were a subcontractor of a subcontractor of a subcontractor, and they built a widget, a small widget, that went on the rocket engines. So my dad had some contribution to this wonderful program that was just awe-inspiring. And for me, when I saw that rocket engine, what sunk in my mind was not only did my dad play a role in this, but look at all the other pieces and parts that are there. And look at all the other people that are represented in there. And I thought to myself, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to be part of that story. I want to contribute. I didn't know how. I didn't know, 7 years old, the first thing you think of is an astronaut. So, okay, yeah, I'll go do that. But it's through later exposures that I never really even put two and two together that said, being an astronaut is going to be the way that I'm going to contribute. And in fact, I've found other ways to contribute as well. But one thing that I did appreciate, my dad was so proud of having that contribution. And I wanted to have that sense of pride. Growing up here in El Paso, probably like many of us, you grow up and you're exposed to all sorts of, wonderful things that just, make you uniquely yourself. So have a few photographs here of the time that we lived in California, as well as the time that we lived here in El Paso. My parents were loving parents, provided a lot of support to both myself, my sister, who is a year older than I am, and my little brother, who is 4 years younger than I am, providing us with a number of unique opportunities, including, for Ginger, our safety town, as well as, how many wonderful Christmas mornings that we wake up and the snow was on the ground, going outside and having a good old-fashioned snowball fight with Mom and Dad. There's a lot of very wonderful experiences and memories that I have here as a child growing up in El Paso. But the things that really influenced who I was, came with the exposures that I had through my education. You're going to see some common themes, and I put these to the kids that I talk to when I go give talks to schools. One of them is working hard. What does hard work mean? Well, my parents were always very supportive of our education. And my dad and my mom exposed me to a lot. I can tell you every single science fair project that I did. And today I can tell you what those results were. Everything from what is a bean plant, to what is an atom, to what is a geyser, to what is a transatlantic continental rift, to zone electrophoresis, to what is an atom. I mean, all these things, I remember those experiments. Those were embedded into myself growing up as a student at Bonham. And it was through that direct involvement that my parents had in my life that provided me with those opportunities. But when I really think about what are the things that I remember most about my parents, is that my father, when he moved back to El Paso from Los Angeles, he came to work with the railroad. Initially, it was the Pacific Fruit Express. He worked as a person who helped fix the refrigeration units. Eventually that was purchased by the Southern Pacific. He got a new job, and he went to go work as an electrician in the engineering roundhouse. And then subsequent to that, it was the Union Pacific. But there was a time in there for about a year and a half, that my dad was laid off. And I remember as a kid in middle school, while all this stuff was going on around me, he was there to support me. And not only that, I remember driving with my father as he was taking any job he could get his hands on. In this case, he had a paper route. We would leave at 10 o'clock at night, drive out here to the El Paso Times facility. He'd have his entire truck bed loaded up with bundles of newspapers. And then we would drive around the east side, dropping them off to the kids that would eventually distribute them to the individual households. And I remember as a kid, probably one of the most significant, I want to say it was, most significant Christmas Eves was driving with my father in his truck, dropping off papers on Christmas Eve while everyone was out going to church, getting ready to wrap presents, and we were unloading papers for the following day. And that night, about 2 o'clock in the morning when the run was done, he went home, and the following morning, there were presents under the tree. It wasn't the Xboxes of the world, it wasn't these really fancy toys. It was that hard work, working hard. That was very impactful for me. My father never gave up. Eventually, things turned around at the railroad, and he started working again. And until he retired, worked third shift. 10 o'clock at night was his start time. 6 o'clock in the morning is when he was done. He would roll in 7 o'clock in the morning, maybe bring some donuts from Gussie's Bakery, and then he'd go to bed. But he was always there for me for my all my sports, basketball, football, what have you. As I got older, Ginger was Hank's, and they were somewhat of a rival for us because they were on the east side as well. But I was a Mustang, still am a Mustang, Burgess Mustang. And, as a kid growing up, one of the things that my parents exposed me to was never giving up. So I'll tell you a story about my mom. While I was in middle school, my mom, when she graduated, she had basic secretarial skills, bookkeeping skills, and that was pretty much all that she did. But she wanted more. So she went back to school. And as a middle school student, being able to see your mom walk across the stage and get her associate's degree, very impressive. And then, getting ready to head into high school, well, I wasn't the first minor to graduate. My mom was the first minor to graduate. And being able to see her accept her diploma from the University of Texas at El Paso and get her degree in teaching was a very impactful thing for me. So even though I had a lot of experiences as a high schooler, where I think we all get exposed to this, especially for those of us that are involved in sports, about never giving up and teamwork and being there for your teammates. The exposure that I had at home are the things that really galvanized in my brain what was really important in success, because I could see in my parents' eyes, I could see in my mother's eyes, I could see in my father's eyes that the result of hard work and determination could get you whatever you wanted regardless of what the circumstances were around you. Never give up, always work hard. Let's see. And as I continued my education here in El Paso, of course, the wonderful University of Texas at El Paso. Now, I do have to confess, my very first semester in college was in a small town in Wisconsin called Beloit. Beloit College. I went there because I wanted to play football. Of all things, right? I get up there, I played football, and actually ended up with so many concussions that I decided I had to do something else with my brain other than having it rattle around inside my skull. So I decided to come back here. And while I was here, you know, certainly I came here, and the year that I graduated was 1989, but I had a wonderful educational experience here at UTEP. Got my mechanical engineering degree. You know what? And I would have to tell Dr. Natalicio that out of all the wonderful things that I received while I was at UTEP, you know, for me, the most impactful thing was I got introduced to my wife. Marie and I met at UTEP, and needless to say, in 1989, when I graduated and got ready to leave UTEP, I get ready to leave El Paso, eventually went off into the Houston area, went to go work for a chemical company, and then bounced around the other degree programs, also ran schools like, you know, University of Houston and Rice University. You know, that this was the key. And it was through these exposures that it galvanized in me who I am today, and also the message that I preach to parents and that I preach to kids. Because, you know, as we as adults have to realize that we are the biggest influence in the way our children grow up. It's not an astronaut or a flight director or a policeman or a fireman that's going to inspire them who they're going to be. It's us. It's us and those unique experiences that we provide them. And it's through the experience that I had with my parents and their loving relationship that I have a loving relationship with my wife. And we try to provide those same kind of opportunities to my children. I get asked all the time, so you have 5 kids, which one of them want to become astronauts? And I tell, it doesn't matter to me. I just want them to pursue their own dreams. I want them to achieve their own goals in life. Because just because I had a desire to become an astronaut doesn't mean I want anyone else to be an astronaut. The only reason I would want anyone to be an astronaut is because that's what they want to be. You know, so as a kid growing up in the east side of El Paso, coming down rocket slides in Pounder Park, you know, to one that it would eventually, you know, take both Atlantis and ultimately Discovery to the heavens. All that I needed for my success, I learned right here. I'm grateful for having an opportunity to grow up in El Paso. I think El Paso is a great place. I think it very much made me who I am. It made my parents who they are. It made their parents who they were. It made my great-great-grandparents who they were. So, you guys get to decide. You know, I wasn't born here, but really believe that I'm from here. So when an opportunity like flying in space comes to me and came to me, it was only natural to share it with my El Paso family. So I have a little video that kind of commemorates that. I was very fortunate in that I had I was blessed. Blessed to have an opportunity to be part of the Space Shuttle program. Blessed to have an opportunity to fly in space and to see the world from that unique vantage point. I'm blessed to have a wonderful family, wonderful wife, wonderful children. I'm truly blessed to have been from El Paso, and yeah, I'm an El Pasoan. And but when I think about what the future holds, it's a real simple thing. It's about doing what was done for me, paying it forward to the next generation. Now, those of you may or may not know, but again, I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to put together a children's book to commemorate not only the history of the Space Shuttle endeavor, but also the significant contributions of the Space Shuttle program. And it's a book that's written for kids ages K through 6th grade. And, you know, it's because of this mentality that we have a personal responsibility to inspire the next generation, that local leaders, Kirk and Judy Robison of the Peter Piper franchise here in El Paso have been so gracious that they have taken and donated close to 1,000 copies of Endeavor's Long Journey and distributed among not just every grade school in El Paso, but in every grade school in El Paso County. And that's what it means to pay things forward. And I want to thank them for their contribution and their commitment, not just to El Paso as being leaders of El Paso, but also recognition that, you know, it's what we do as adults, it's the way we portray ourselves to our children that we need to be very conscientious of. Because whether it's we're showing them what hard work and determination can get you, or inspiring them and supporting them in their pursuits of science or engineering or mathematics or arts or whatever their desires are. That's what our roles are. That's what our responsibilities are. And so to my efforts within the university is to try and take whatever I have, which, you know, is not a lot. I am who I am, and I do the kind of things that I do. But if I can help the university and help some students get inspired about space, you know what? That's what I need to do. So again, I want to thank you all very much for your time. You've been a gracious audience, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this evening. Thank you.
This program is made possible in part by a grant from the Hunt Family Foundation of El Paso, Texas. This program is made possible in part by a grant from Humanities Texas, the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and by the El Paso County Historical Commission. By Maury and Jean Kemp, and by Capstone Productions, Inc.
Hello from the White House. Thanks for joining me for a look at Tom Lee's El Paso. My mother grew up in El Paso, and one of my happy childhood memories is taking the train from Midland to El Paso and seeing the silhouette of the Juarez Mountains and Mount Franklin with the lights of El Paso in the distance. In this program, Tom describes his experience growing up in El Paso and the places and people that gave meaning to his life, especially Mount Franklin and his father, Mayor Tom Lee Sr. Tom's painting, Rio Grande, has hung in the Oval Office for President Bush to see every day. This work of art shows Tom's love for his desert home and for the river that formed the Pass of the North. Tom Lee was a great artist, a great Texan, and for 8 years his painting has provided a warm reminder of home. President Bush and I thank the city of El Paso for loaning Rio Grande to the White House. When we return to Texas, we look forward to seeing Tom's painting in the El Paso Museum of Art once again. And now, we'll hear from Tom in his own words. Here's Tom Lee's El Paso.
Mother see that I was clean and looked nice, and she could be proud of me. And I'd go and take the streetcar and go downtown and see Dad. And sometimes he'd give me a quarter, sometimes a dime. And the dime was to get home on. And I'd just go to the public library. And when I was about 11 or 12, I was in the library looking at the art books when Maud Sullivan, who was a great, great woman, she was the one that showed me all the art books. That was really hot stuff for me. I wanted to be an artist from the very time I was a little bitty kid. And I'd go to the Carnegie Public Library there. It was on the site of, just behind where the present Central Library is located on Oregon Street. And then across from the library on Oregon Street was the YMCA with the gymnasium and the swimming pool. And Dad gave me the money every year to belong to the YMCA, starting when I was a peewee in the peewee class. And I learned to swim when I was a little kid. And I'd get the books that Ms. Sullivan let me take from the library and leave them with the clerk there at the front desk of the YMCA, and then go and have a swim and work in the museum, in the gymnasium. And we did gymnastics, and I took boxing lessons. Then I'd go out and wait for the streetcar, and it'd go out Arizona Street, past Moorhead School, where students were known as, to us people from Lamar, as Moorhead and less brains, etc. We managed to have my brother Joe and I have a very happy life, lucky life. Our parents loved us and helped us. So everything about El Paso when I was a youth interests me yet. And I wish I could dig it all up again.
This is Tom Lee Park. It overlooks the neighborhood where Tom Lee grew up as a young boy during the turbulent years of the Mexican Revolution. His father was mayor of El Paso then, and Pancho Villa threatened to kill Mayor Lee and kidnap his two sons. That's one of the stories he tells in this rare TV conversation, recorded when he was 92 years old, a year before he died. It was a privilege to know and work with Tom Lee, and it is a privilege to share this conversation with you.
I think that El Paso was, when I was conscious of what it was like, was perhaps a unique city. For instance, all the time during the teens, the Mexican Revolution raged, and thousands of refugees came out of Mexico. Thousands were killed, and the troubles, disease, and the influenza, and so on. So it was a very unsettled place, and yet very somehow tranquil. And it seems to me that, for instance, what other city can say that in the 20th century, in the 1900s, there was artillery fire over their city, and serious artillery fire. It makes an impression on a kid. I was 12 years old.
You always lived at the base of the mountain, kind of. You've always lived.
It's kind of. I know Mother told me that she could look out of the window of a Hotel Dieu where I was delivered, or where she stayed after my delivery, and see Mount Franklin from Hotel Dieu. And then we lived on Nevada Street in two addresses, 1316 and then 1400 Nevada Street. It was right under the mountain, always visible there, and particularly visible from my room in the north side of the house. And then I went away, and when I came back, I had a place on the north Stanton Street, on the third floor in an apartment house. And there was Mount Franklin. And we used to, Sarah and I, when we were first married, used to walk a lot along Rim Road, and there was Mount Franklin. And we got the house out on Reynolds Boulevard, and right out my skylight, why, there was Mount Franklin. And we moved here, and we are on the side of Mount Franklin, and it's a kind of a thing that has been with me always, and I think it will be until the day I die. Hope so.
When the Texas writer J. Frank Dobie visited Tom, he said, "Tom, you don't even have a tree in your yard." And Tom responded, "You don't have a mountain in yours." Tom wrote, "Sarah and I live on the east side of our mountain. It is the sunrise side, not the sunset side. It is the side to see the day that is coming, not the side to see the day that is gone. The best day is the day coming, with the work to do, with the eyes wide open, with the heart grateful."
My favorite thing about Mount Franklin is something that I read in one of the poems of Carl Sandburg, whom I've always admired as a poet and as a biographer of Abraham Lincoln. But he said in one of the poems,
"A mountain," Carl Sandburg says, "is something that's fastened down, something you can count on. By that token, a mountain is a talisman in our hearts. In looking at Mount Franklin up there, we lift our eyes toward the sky."
Words from El Paso's Tom Lee. Now, the time has come, as it has each year since 1941, for you to look to the mountain as they light the star.
Carl Wilder was a good friend, and Connery Bryson worked for him there at KTSM Radio. And they said the electric company, they're going to light a star on the mountain for the Christmas holidays, be like a star on a tree, only this will be a star on the mountain. And we want you to say something about your feelings toward the mountain. You're a native here. And then we'll turn the lights on. And the lights will stay on until after New Year's. Then after the war, why, Irvin Wills, who was the head of the electric company, said, well, we'll keep it going at Christmas time. And they did. They kept me on the program, and that's when I wrote the text that a few years later, after I had delivered the thing at Christmas time for several years, Carl Herzog printed a beautiful little book, Old Mount Franklin, I called it.
To people who would ask him what could be so special about the dried up, bare, empty country he obviously preferred to live and work in, Tom responded, first I say, I was born in it. And furthermore, I say, I love it for the intensity of its sunlight, the clarity of its sky, the hugeness of its space, its revealed structure of naked Earth's primal forms without adornment. Thank you for watching Tom Lee's El Paso.
I am not David Dunham from Texas Monthly, who is in your program. He had called at 3:30 this afternoon at my home and said that his plane was canceled and that he could get another one and be here by 8:40. And I told him we weren't going to wait for him, but he wanted to be here to bring Texas Monthly's, who is a sponsor of this event tonight, to bring their greetings. Before I say anything else, though, I want to mention to you all something I found out from Joe Gomez as he was coming in, a historian in his own right, who said that today, October 1st, is the 55th anniversary of NASA's founding, October 1st. But Texas Monthly is one of our sponsors of this evening. As I said, David Dunham was to be here. He's been with Texas Monthly for 42 years. And they were great enough to give the Tom Lee Institute a full-page ad in September's issue of Texas Monthly announcing the Tom Lee Trail. And we'll go back to the trail. Can we go back to the trail? I want you all to notice the shape of this trail, that it forms this big heart in the center of Texas, and it points at the bottom to El Paso. And when people have told me, like for Texas Monthly, we'll keep the trail within Texas, well, I'm sorry, but when you come to the Pass of the North, you have to cross borders to Mexico and to New Mexico. Tom Lee's work is embedded in all of these places. Just as in El Paso, it's embedded in many institutions, the University of Texas at El Paso, the Museum of Art, the History Museum, the Mexican Consulate, Jacob Prado is here. He had such a presence in Juarez and writing about the bullfights. So there are really trails within the trail. There's a trail within El Paso and then in other parts of the state. So you can travel from El Paso and go to Odessa and learn about the Longhorns and see their Stampede mural in their post office. Or you can go to Seymour and learn about Comanches, because Tom Lee was interested in the regions of the state. You'll learn about Comanches in Seymour, or in Dallas, where I'll be tomorrow, you'll learn about the Hall of State and cattle and cowboys. In Kingsville, you'll learn about the King Ranch. So Texas Monthly has gotten very excited. In fact, they've never promoted Texas as an art destination. But David's been talking about, especially having an artist like Tom Lee who cares about the history in the region. They want to start promoting Texas as an artist destination. And there's also an Italian Renaissance scholar. This is based on the concept of the Piero della Francesca Trail in Italy, northern Italy, who is going to come travel the trail, comparing Tom Lee's work to the great Italian masters. But anyway, this has been a great evening to go all the way to space and then come back home again. For though we dream of space, and some of us even go there, we live every day in this earth among neighbors and friends. Learning our history and knowing our cultural identity enriches our lives on this earth. And Tom Lee was a masterful guide. On behalf of Texas Monthly and the Tom Lee Institute, I would like to thank all of our evening's generous sponsors and the sponsors of Tom Lee Month, which runs throughout the month. There are over 50 events, so I hope you'll look us up online or get a catalog. But our generous sponsors are Betty Ruth Wakefield Haley, Capital Bank, Casa Ford, Lincoln Nissan, Dan and Joanne Longoria, Mattress Firm, El Paso Electric Company, JP and Mary John Bryan, Jack and Yvonne Cardwell, Kirk and Judy Robinson and Peter Piper Pizza, Raymond Palacios, Bravo Cadillac, Robert and Maureen Deckard from Dallas. His grandfather was Judge Ewing Thomason, who was Tom Lee's father's law partner way back when. Tyler Francis and Francis Aviation, the National Endowment for the Humanities, Humanities Texas, the El Paso Times, Western Refining, Hunt Family Foundation, the City of El Paso Museum and Cultural Affairs Department, the City of El Paso Convention and Visitors Bureau, Wells Fargo, City Private Bank, Scott and Tanya Schwartz, and Michael Churchman and Laurie Paternoster, and the Explorium. But we do look forward to seeing you at the rest of Tom Lee Month as we celebrate our history, our culture, our environment, and our people. Thank you very much for coming, and good night.